The grand galactic arena pulsed with light and noise, a cosmic theater of power where civilizations flaunted their deadliest creations. Thousands of alien eyes watched from terraces carved into orbiting stone rings. Every species came to prove dominance through weaponry. For centuries, it had been tradition, a bloodless spectacle, a declaration of superiority. When humanity was announced as the next participant, laughter rolled through the crowd like thunder. They called it quaint that a world barely known outside its solar system would enter such an event. Commentators mocked the name, Earth Defense Coalition, calling it an archaeological remnant pretending to be a military force. When the human team appeared, the laughter grew louder. Their armor was dull gray, their weapons unadorned. No plasma rifles, no antimatter launchers, just polished metal, ballistic rifles, and a few shields bearing flags instead of field generators. To the aliens, it was absurdity made visible. How could creatures still using combustion-based projectiles hope to impress in a galaxy where stars themselves were used as ammunition? The announcer's voice filled the void. Representing the primitive species Earth. Let us see what relics they've brought to amuse us. A group of armored giants from the Drax Dominion entered first, each carrying cannons that could melt asteroids. Their first volley erased the human drones from existence in seconds. Sparks and twisted metal scattered across the arena floor. The spectators roared approval, slamming appendages, tendrils, and claws against their seats. To them, it was entertainment, a brief demonstration of superiority. The human commander didn't move. He stood at the platform's edge, expression unreadable beneath the helmet. When the display ended, he raised one hand, signaling for silence. The laughter continued until he spoke through the translator grid. His voice carried no anger, no pleading, only calm authority. That was an exhibition, he said. Now humanity will participate. The statement barely registered before the arena doors opened again. From the darkness stepped a single figure. Humanoid, tall, wrapped in matte black armor unlike the others. No energy field shimmered around it. No weapons glowed or hummed. In its hand, it carried a sword, an actual blade of steel. The aliens broke into hysterics. A blade? One announcer exclaimed. Do they plan to duel nostalgia? Even the Drax soldiers laughed, lowering their cannons to point mockingly at the lone figure. The knight didn't react. The air seemed to thicken as it walked forward with precise, deliberate steps, the tip of the blade brushing the arena floor, leaving faint sparks with each stride. Scanners activated across the stadium, feeding data into the observers' panels. Every reading came back inconclusive. The blade had no power source, no radiation, no chemical trace. Some thought it was decorative, others suspected psychological warfare, humans trying to dramatize their defeat. The knight stopped at the arena's center. A hush began to ripple through the first tiers of the crowd as something indefinable shifted. The figure raised the sword vertically, its reflection glinting against alien lighting, and the laughter faltered. There was no visible threat, yet every instinct screamed that this was not theater. An alien technician shouted from the observation deck. Sensors malfunctioning. The gravity field near the human fluctuates. The announcement spread confusion, but the knight remained motionless. The human commander's voice echoed once more. You wanted to see our weapons. You're looking at one. For the first time, the arena didn't laugh. The aliens leaned forward, intrigued but cautious. The Drax captain grinned, signaling his mech to engage, confident that the demonstration would end quickly. The knight didn't move, only lowered the sword slightly, as if measuring the air. Energy crackled from the alien side as plasma arcs licked the dust. The atmosphere trembled. But the human remained still, no visible defense activated. The mech advanced, metallic feet shaking the ground, but before impact, something invisible rippled through the arena, a wave of silence, unnatural and heavy. Every system blinked red. Cameras glitched. Scanners died. For 3 full seconds, the entire arena lost all telemetry. When vision returned, the knight was standing alone. The Drax mech lay split open at perfect diagonal symmetry, no explosion, no burn marks, just separation, clean, surgical, absolute. No one spoke. The human commander didn't celebrate. He simply gave a slight nod, as if confirming a result he already knew. Then came his calm, measured words through the translator. Our weapons are not made to impress. They're made to end laughter. The crowd didn't roar. They only stared, the realization sinking in that the primitive species they had mocked just rewritten the meaning of power and silence. The arena lights dimmed as the mech's wreckage was dragged away, its metallic shell split so cleanly it reflected the spectators' faces like a mirror. Analysts argued over the feed, demanding to know how a blade of unregistered composition could bypass plasma shielding and quantum armor. No answer came. Every sensor, every visual recording, every telemetry line returned corrupted. The only constant was the image of a motionless human knight holding a sword that shouldn't exist. Commentators scrambled to reframe the event, calling it an illusion, a trick of gravity interference. The council moderators tried to restore the crowd's confidence, insisting the human had used banned technology. But the Drax Dominion's own data confirmed it. No forbidden energy detected, no field distortions traceable to known science. The laughter that had once filled the arena had curdled into silence. The knight remained still. It didn't pose or gloat. Instead, it slowly knelt, resting the sword's point on the floor. The gesture confused the audience. Reverence, submission, or defiance, no one could tell. When the knight rose again, the floor sensors recorded a faint vibration, almost like a heartbeat, spreading outward in concentric waves that short-circuited nearby equipment. A new challenger was brought forward, this time from the Kethan Alliance. A war construct fueled by antimatter reactors, armed with singularity whips. The Kethans wanted to reclaim the audience's attention, to erase the unease. Their machine entered the arena blazing with light, every inch radiating deadly potential. But as it moved closer to the human, its systems began flickering erratically, sensors reporting impossible values. Its gravity stabilizers spun uncontrollably, reacting as though space itself refused to stabilize near the blade. Commanders in the control tower shouted orders, trying to terminate the match, but the knight lifted the sword again. There was no sound, no flash, no visible emission, yet the Kethan machine stopped mid-motion. Every molecule within it began to shimmer, its metal dulling as though centuries of decay consumed it in moments. Within seconds, it disintegrated into dust. A shockwave of disbelief rippled through the tears. The alien spectators struggled to rationalize what they had seen. Some called it phase manipulation, others whispered of cursed relics. But the scientists watching realized something deeper. No matter what their instruments measured, the readings refused to exist within known physics. The human commander finally spoke again, his voice steady. You came to witness our weapons. What you're seeing is our reflection. His words were plain, yet they resonated through the chamber as if amplified by something unseen. For every weapon we build, we remember the wars that forced it into existence. That is why we never forget their weight. Data feeds streamed to military observers across the galaxy. Every empire watching began running simulations, trying to reproduce what they'd witnessed, but no variable fit the outcome. The sword wasn't a weapon in the conventional sense. It behaved more like a phenomenon, something beyond material constraints. A Zorath philosopher among the spectators murmured, "It's not technology. It's intention made physical." The statement spread quickly, repeated across communication channels, sparking both fascination and fear. The knight turned toward the nearest command platform. For the first time, its visor reflected a faint pulse of blue light, like an echo of a dying star. That tiny flicker silenced even the skeptical analysts. Every alien in that arena felt the same inexplicable pull, a recognition buried deep in instinct, something primal, something ancient. The human commander gave a final statement, each word sharp as the sword's edge. You measure strength by destruction. We measure it by endurance. Our weapons don't need to burn worlds to prove what we are. No applause followed. The crowd remained paralyzed, caught between disbelief and dread. The knight lowered the sword once more, its presence alone enough to warp the silence into reverence. Somewhere high in the observation towers, A trembling voice whispered the truth that no one wanted to admit. They didn't bring a weapon. They brought a warning. The destruction of the Kethan construct spread through the galactic networks within minutes. Feeds were replayed endlessly, each empire dissecting the same frame where the sword touched nothing and yet erased everything. Laboratories from multiple systems submitted requests to analyze the arena's data logs, only to find them corrupted beyond recovery. Even backup recordings displayed inconsistencies, as if the very concept of measurement had been rewritten in the weapon's presence. The Galactic Council declared a formal investigation, but the human commander declined cooperation, offering no explanation. "You wouldn't understand it," he said simply. "You've never had to." While officials argued, the knight remained at the center of the arena, motionless, blade grounded in the floor. It emitted no energy signature, yet nearby structures began registering faint temporal fluctuations. Engineers verified and re-verified their sensors, finding nothing wrong except reality itself shifting near that single figure. Every empire that once mocked humanity began reassessing its assumptions. They had measured intelligence by power, power by scale, and scale by destruction. Humanity had just broken that chain with quiet precision. Another challenger stepped forward despite the Council's hesitation, a bioengineered titan from the Zoth Empire, grown in artificial suns and armored with living metal that adapted to threats. As it advanced, the arena's temperature dropped. The creature's adaptive plating rippled in confusion, trying to counter a force it couldn't quantify. When it struck, the blow met the blade, and for an instant, both existed and didn't. The titan froze mid-lunge, eyes fading from rage to terror before collapsing into a cloud of inert ash. No one cheered. No one spoke. The human commander broke the silence once more. "That blade isn't new," he said. "It carries the memory of everything we've ever survived." His tone was factual, not boastful. "It was forged from the fragments of our oldest wars, from the weapons that nearly erased us. What you're seeing isn't power, it's consequence." The translation rippled across the alien networks. Philosophers debated the idea that a weapon could embody memory. Some called it superstition. Others began to fear that it was truth. To them, war had always been an exhibition of dominance, a sterile display of advancement. For humanity, it was evolution carved in fire and loss. The sword, now the focus of every lens in the arena, was unlike any material ever scanned. Its structure shifted between metallic and organic states, sometimes reflecting entire eras within its surface: tribal spears, steel forges, orbital cannons, all merging into one seamless continuum. It wasn't built to fight, it was built to remember. A researcher whispered across the transmission lines. "It's not drawing energy from matter. It's drawing from identity." That statement spread faster than the footage. For the first time in the arena's history, the spectators felt something unfamiliar: humility. The knight turned its gaze toward the High Council balcony. The commander's voice followed with the same cold calm. "Every weapon you've seen from us was born in desperation. We never built tools of destruction to rule, we built them to outlive our mistakes. You called us primitive because our guns used metal and fire. But those metals carried our dead, and that fire kept us alive." The translation grid flickered as if the system itself resisted conveying the weight of the words. The aliens who once laughed at humanity now watched in silence, their pride dissolving into unease. The sword, inert yet alive, pulsed once more with faint resonance. The vibration spread through the arena's core, forcing nearby machines to shut down automatically, unable to process the frequency. The human commander ended with a simple statement. "You look for power in progress. We found ours in pain. That's the difference." The arena lights dimmed again. Every empire's representatives sat motionless, realization settling like gravity itself. What they had witnessed wasn't a display of superiority. It was a revelation of endurance, the kind only a species forged through extinction could ever wield. The Galactic Council demanded the event be halted, but their orders were drowned out by the silence that followed. Fear had replaced spectacle. Empires that once traded jokes about humanity now whispered questions none could answer. The arena, designed for triumph and humiliation, had turned into a cathedral of unease. Every alien watching sensed a shift far deeper than technology, a confrontation with something they couldn't quantify. The night stood unmoving while analysis teams scrambled for explanations. Data packets flew across networks, theories stacked upon contradictions. Some claimed the weapon folded quantum layers, others suggested temporal echoes. None dared consider the simpler truth, that it was neither science nor sorcery, but will manifested as form. The Council's lead physicist confessed quietly. It shouldn't exist, but it does. The alien spectators were restless. Entire civilizations had built their pride on technological supremacy. Now they were forced to watch a species once dismissed as backward dismantle their illusions without firing a shot. Every empire's military command convened emergency sessions, each asking the same question: what happens if humans decide to use it for war? The human commander gave no speeches of conquest. His restraint unnerved them more than any threat could. "We didn't come to prove dominance," his voice echoed. "We came to remind you what survival costs." The words spread across translation networks, transmitted to billions. That single statement struck deeper than the blade itself. In private chambers, alien leaders debated whether the demonstration violated peace accords. Some demanded sanctions, others warned against provoking what they couldn't contain. The Drax Dominion proposed retaliation to restore balance of fear, but their generals refused, recalling the mechs sliced without force or flame. The lesson was clear: what humanity carried couldn't be countered through strength. Within the arena, another test was proposed by the Council's chair to reclaim credibility: the gravity cannon, a weapon designed to shatter moons. The humans agreed instantly. The device was charged, its power visible even to the naked eye, distorting space around its core. The night remained still, sword lowered, as the firing sequence began. When the beam struck, it vanished mid-transit, consumed by an unseen barrier that left no trace of impact. Energy readings flatlined across every monitor. The impossible had occurred again, without movement or resistance. Panic spread through the observation decks. Engineers swore the beam hadn't been blocked, it had simply ceased to exist. Spectators whispered that the human blade didn't deflect matter, it negated intent itself. The commander raised his gaze, voice low but piercing through the chaos. "That's what happens when will outweighs power. Your machines measure destruction. Ours measure purpose." The message traveled faster than the light of the cannon's discharge. Civilizations across the stars began reevaluating everything they believed about strength. For the first time, fear of humanity didn't stem from its armies, but from its conviction. The aliens realized they faced a species that could weaponize belief without religion, violence without hate, defense without fear. Reports poured in from across the galaxy: public riots, military withdrawals, trade markets collapsing under the psychological weight of revelation. The Council issued a directive forbidding further human participation in combat exhibitions, claiming philosophical contamination. Yet, deep down, they all knew the contamination had already begun. The knight sheathed the sword into the arena's surface, and the vibrations ceased. The commander looked at the assembly and spoke once more. "We don't fight for conquest. We fight because the universe taught us how to survive when nothing else would. If you think that makes us dangerous, you're right." No one laughed, no one moved. The spectacle of power had become a sermon of consequence. The galaxy finally understood the truth humanity had carried in silence: that the deadliest weapon was not invention, but intent. The arena fell into absolute stillness. Every eye fixed on the knight, who remained in place as if carved from the very silence he had created. The wreckage, the shattered pride, and the unanswered questions hung heavier than gravity itself. The alien delegations waited for a final word, but none came. Only the slow sound of metal scraping against the floor as the knight raised the sword one last time. The blade caught the pale light and reflected nothing back, as though it absorbed truth itself. Without warning, the knight lifted his helmet and placed it aside. The face beneath was unmistakably human, scarred, aged, and calm. Those watching expected the expression of triumph. Instead, they found weariness. His eyes carried something older than victory. You asked to see our weapons? He said, voice steady and low. What you've seen isn't a threat. It's a reminder. Every translator repeated the words across systems, and they struck with the precision of a blade. You laugh at simplicity, he continued. But simplicity endures long after arrogance burns out. His hand tightened on the hilt as the blade began to fade, not in glow but in presence. Material disintegrated into particles too fine to register. Within seconds, only a faint shimmer remained in the air. Where it touched the arena floor, it left behind a sigil, the shape of a single human heartbeat frozen in metallic light. The alien delegates leaned forward, sensing the end yet not understanding it. The commander, standing beside the knight, spoke next. That was restraint, he said evenly. If we ever chose to fight with purpose, there wouldn't be witnesses. The blunt honesty sent a chill through even the most hardened warlords. There was no arrogance in his tone, only the certainty of a species that had learned survival through extinction-level odds. In that instant, alien civilizations saw themselves reflected through humanity's lens, comfortable, detached, and blind to the lessons carved into history's scars. They built weapons to intimidate, humans built them to endure. They sought spectacle, humans sought survival. That difference shattered the illusion of superiority that had governed the galaxy for centuries. The Galactic Council tried to speak, to reassert authority, but words faltered. Nothing could reframe what had unfolded. Across the galaxy, networks replayed the final moment again and again, the human knight standing over the fading symbol, silent yet louder than any declaration. Philosophers labeled it the quiet revelation. Militaries named it the day the laughing stopped. Within hours, the arena was sealed, declared a restricted monument. Scientists returned to study residual traces, but found no measurable substance, only an energy imprint that reacted to emotion. Those who stood near it felt a heartbeat in their minds, a single pulse echoing endlessly, a reminder that intent had left a scar no instrument could erase. The humans departed without ceremony. No ships remained in orbit, no transmissions followed. Their silence was their message. Alien historians struggled to define what had happened, dividing into two schools of thought, one calling it an anomaly of physics, the other calling it the revelation of spirit. Neither could explain why their empire's confidence never returned afterward. Centuries later, the story persisted. Children of distant worlds still whispered of the human knight who carried a blade made of history and silence. No records could describe the metal, but all agreed on the words spoken before the humans left. We learned to fight not because we wanted to, but because the universe never gave us a choice. You call that barbaric. We call it living. The broadcast of that moment remained archived in every galactic database, untouched and unanalyzed, a warning wrapped in humility. The final frame showed the empty arena, the sigil still faintly glowing, pulsing once like a heartbeat before fading completely. No empire ever dared challenge Earth again. For them, humanity ceased to be just another species. They became the echo that followed every war, the proof that survival, when forged in suffering, becomes something even gods learn to fear.